So this afternoon we have Daryl Tester here, who apparently people don't quite understand the concept of the name of the tutorial. I came to bury Ansible, not praise it. Get it right. Daryl, take it away.
Greetings. I'll start the proper slideshow in a sec, but 20 minutes ago I went to open my slide deck and this happened. And I effectively vacuum sealed myself to the seat when this happened because it's like my backup of this presentation is from 4 days ago and was a little less polished. It was reasonably polished, but I didn't want to have to go back. So I will get rid of this. I can figure out how. What happened was I started up LibreOffice inside a Python virtual environment, and apparently the shared libraries are not conducive to doing whatever it is that LibreOffice does badly. So, having said that, let me do the real one. Same error? No, it's not the same error.
No,
Different error. Fresh, new and exciting errors. We shall start. There we go. Those are my details if you want to quickly capture them. The GitHub repo is empty. The entire handcrafted GitHub repo is empty. It may have someone else's repos in there, but none of mine yet, so this will go up shortly in the next day or so. I'd like to begin with acknowledgement of country. I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet today, the Kaurna people of the Adelaide region. Pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge my employers, past, present and future. I'm currently a contractor and people pay me money to do things to their computers, but I should point out that my views may not and probably quite possibly don't represent theirs. I'm a little bit nervous, so I'll get you to hold all your questions to the end of the talk because my train of thought derails very easily. I'm normally happy not to speak to myself. I normally let my work speak for me, which is how I much prefer it. But I need to put in some backstory about why this talk came to be, and more to the point, why I came to be the way I am. From a fractions point of view, I've been using computers now for close to 5/6 of my life, which is a reasonably long time, and I'm rapidly approaching the point of having used Unix for 3/4 of that time, which is a lot. Now, Unix has had pretty much a profound effect on the way that I think about computing and systems design in general. It introduced me to the concept of mini languages very early on, now currently known as domain-specific languages, and it also how disparate tools can be combined together without necessarily having to be homogeneous. So in terms of they're not necessarily designed to fit together, but the Unix pipeline does an incredible job of doing that. So many times I've thought of Unix as computerized Lego, and how the different building blocks can be combined to achieve similar results of what you're trying to do. Even before open source, a lot of the source code for Unix utilities was available. I should have started that timer. Apologies for that. Yes, a lot of source code for Unix utilities. There was a lot of hacking on Unix way back in the early days. Was available, and it was available for study, which I did in my youth. Taught me a lot about the design of programs, both good and bad. And due to my initial impoverished access to such computing power, I spent a lot of time thinking about it as well, which I do to today. I spend a lot more time thinking about computers than actually doing stuff, usually while at work. It looks like napping, but it's not. So with those caveats out of the way, the remainder of the talk. So what is Ansible? Oh, they got the formatting of this all screwed up. Hang on. That's a shout out to Ben and Michael when you watch this talk later. For those who don't realise it, it's a Simpsons reference. Anyway, Ansible was the first public commit to GitHub was in 2012, but I suspect it had been around for a bit then because it shows 1.5 as the version number already by then. And it has since been acquired by a purple trilby wearing company whom I won't explicitly name because they became a vendor at some point of this, they became a supporter of this conference. So it is a set of tools for performing infrastructure as code. So infrastructure as code, for those who aren't familiar, and if you aren't, I'm not sure why you're here, but is for provisioning and computing of various computing resources, like including networking, storage, VMs, in an automated fashion, typically using static or dynamic description files, instead of being run interactively and performed manually, so you get a consistent environment set up after the deployment of said, well, usually. There are caveats around that as well. But that's what we're striving for, is the consistent application of configuration to servers. Other tools in this space include Puppet, Chef, SaltStack, and the granddaddy of them all, CF Engine. It runs what is essentially domain-specific language, which we'll come back to. Other sorts of domain-specific languages are probably SQL, which a majority of you be familiar with, and SED, which some of you might not be familiar with, but underneath it's a very obtuse domain-specific language. It's agentless, so it doesn't require a permanently running agent on the far end, unlike Puppet, but does usually require Python to be installed on the server because it does run Python modules there, and sometimes specific versions of Python, which can be annoying. And ideally, it's idempotent, which is a quality of being able to rerun a playbook or rerun a configuration push and not torch your server. So, for example, if you're installing software, it will install the software only once and then won't try and reinstall it again because it already exists. Another example is restarting web server after you've performed some changes to it. Ideally, it should identify that the changes you want to perform have already been done, and therefore your web server doesn't need restarting. This is more of an ideal. It's sometimes hard to achieve, but we strive for it. So Ansible's model of operation. Usually you have a set of hosts in an ini file. It's typically an ini or a YAML file. It can be from a module which pulls it from some inventory elsewhere. And the hosts can be grouped together. So you could say for a particular operation you want to provision a stack which has several databases and quite a few web servers. So you could group a set of servers under databases, another set under the web group. The model of operation is, repeating myself. I should have done that thing. I apologise. I hate LibreOffice, especially after that error. So typically we have a playbook that's run. The playbook contains one or more plays, and within the plays they contain one or more tasks. Technically they can be 0, but then it's useless. You may as well be not running it, so we don't do that. We have a concept known as facts, and that's basically potentially immutable information about the system that we're working on. Some facts can be, like for example, a number of network cards and the IP addresses on them. And ideally they should be immutable, but bear in mind that playbooks go out and change the state of things, so potentially they're not always immutable. Ansible has a feature where you can maintain a cache of these facts. So for the run of a playbook, when you're running it, it will maintain a cache of those facts, so it's not going back out to the server and retrieving them all the time. You can actually have those facts persist past the run, but again, then you start dealing with stale facts, and then unhappiness can ensue. And again, going back to state-based, this is part of idempotency. You're sitting there and you're trying to achieve a state of the system, so you want a system that's up and has all the software configured on it. You're trying to set the playbook up to achieve that state, and it is supposed to work it out for you. So rather than you check to see if the software package is installed, you say, I want the software package to be present and it'll go out and say, yeah, it's missing, I will install it for you. So what's my beef with Ansible? I had to cut this section down a lot. And I had 2 examples, both of which had to be cut out as well, which is unfortunate, because technically I'm not here to bag Ansible, although it is fun. I'm here to tout the other guy. But I can't tout the other guy without going into my beefs about Ansible, so here we are. Just let me double check. So minor peeve, it does say it's agentless. That's a lie. It is downloading an agent to run for the interim of the run of the playbook. So technically, in marketing speak, it's not really agentless, but it is because it downloads a chunk of Python code, not necessarily, but for most cases, it is downloading a chunk of Python code to be run on the far end, and then communicates to that chunk of Python code over JSON, over an SSH connection. So, which is essentially a transient agent. I'll also note that during the run, this is also in the minor peeve category, but I had to get these out of the way because I don't think it's that minor. It also runs multiple interactive SSH sessions when a play runs for each play. I don't mind that so much, except it pollutes your login file. If you go onto one of these servers afterwards and you see who's been logging in, you see this Ansible dude or root logging in multiple times. And for me, this is an automation tool. It shouldn't show up in user interaction. There are ways around that. The other guy does it better. But my primary peeve, oh, yeah, I knew that. Sorry. My other peeve with Ansible is, no, we're not talking about Ansible. My peeve with LibreOffice is it doesn't show what's coming up ahead, so I can't tell where I've done this and not. There we go. Bear with me. My major peeve with Ansible, though, is cognitive overload. Having to remember all the little fiddly special case exceptions surrounding the language regarding syntax and semantics, which we will be getting into. But first, my next major peeve out of the way. I love this quote. This is a gent who's also... I came across this quote independently when I was looking for reasons to hate on Ansible. Not strictly true, but yes. He turns out to have been using the same product as what I'm about to demonstrate to you. But yes, YAML and I are not friends. From the 1.5 release note of Ansible, use a language that is both machine and human friendly. I posit to you that it is not human friendly and the machine doesn't care. And I believe that the machine should be doing the work anyway, so I don't care how upsetting the machine finds it. But if humans find it upsetting, then I have an issue. My favourite, well, not my favourite, but a Stack Overflow question that I came across once when I had the similar problem: how do I break a string in YAML over multiple lines? The top answer: here's one of 63 ways, one of which will probably work for your specific scenario. So YAML is simple in the simple case, and when you need to get into the complexities of breaking a string over multiple lines or some other scenario, it quickly becomes very complicated. YAML itself is not expressive enough to describe Ansible playbooks. So to fix that, they bolted Ginger, which is a Python templating system, over the top for added fun. I don't mind Ginger on its own, but Ginger on top of YAML, one of the problems I frequently encounter is how to invoke Ginger within YAML, because most of the time it's double quotes, except when it isn't. There are edge cases where you don't do that and you don't discover it until you've run it and it's gone boom, and it's like, of course, that would be the edge case. It is, yes, not consistent, and consistency is one of those things that Unix Unix itself is inconsistent in its consistent ways, but it's there. And that's a thing that regularly trips me up. This one bakes my noodle every time. this is the variable precedence list from Ansible's itself on variables in general. This is, depending on how you structure your playbook, and I've done this before where I've, for example, written something as a role and then suddenly found out that variable precedence has mucked me up, and mucked is not the word that I'm using in my head. So then I have to restructure it to be able to sit there and get the variable precedence to play properly. And now variable precedence is basically overriding it, where and when you can override it. What additionally grinds my gears about this is the first and the last one, command line values and extra bars, which are passed in as command line variables, are one and the same, except they're the least and the most precedent. And it's like, hang on, they're the same operation, why are they at the far ends? And I don't actually have a good answer for that because I can't see why they would override it in such a fashion. This drives to a popular theme for me, that they seem to add these features almost ad hoc and without a whole lot of thought. Well, they do have thought, and it's basically screw you users. Yes, global vars. So there is variable state that you can keep within it. It is pretty much global. There is a register command you can use, which then sits there and registers for the remainder of the play. It's like keeping track of variable names since the 1980s, and GW Basic was all the rage. It's I don't think of myself as a software engineer, although I've done a large amount of software programming. There are these things called like local variables. Apparently the rest of the world, except for the Ansible crew, have heard of it. Vars themselves, what they call vars, are only set at the start of a play and don't adjust at all until the next play starts. So they're really constants, not vars. So poorly named in that regard. There is a couple of exceptions around that, but all of those are under the control of Ansible, not of the end user. Looping in general. Oh, sorry, data structures. Yeah, any data structure is more complicated than all this, and you will have unhappiness. Sitting there unpacking any sort of complicated data structure. Ansible's take on this is that you shouldn't be doing something like that anyway, but where infrastructure is code, sometimes we need to do complicated stuff. Looping in general. Nested looping definitely irks me. If you do nested loops within Ansible, when you loop over a set of array of values, it uses a fixed name called item. If you nest it, the inner loop also uses the same fixed name called item. So the inner loop will clobber the outer loop. You can override that, but then again, you have to remember that that has to be overridden. The language doesn't take care of, the language doesn't assist you. You're on your own, you've got to do that. And again, and then it's a scoping issue, and then it's also not just a scoping issue, but it's the fact that you have to pick a name that's not being used anywhere else. And if you're responsible for your entire playbook, that's okay. If you're in a group environment or you're using external Ansible collection or someone else's module, then you have to make sure that you don't clobber any of their variables that you may be using. And again, this is work that you shouldn't have to be doing. It's like we're 2025 now. This is stuff that was solved quite some time ago, and yet we seem to be revisiting it. Blocks. Yeah. Blocks is my heading. Blocks I want to use like blocks are for surrounding a group of statements or a group of tasks, where you would say, I only want to do this group of tasks if a particular file exists or whatever. It doesn't quite work like that. What it does is it grabs that attribute that says if the particular file exists and applies them to all the tasks, rather than just saying, execute this block if this thing exists. That works well until you come across a module or an internal statement which doesn't know what the hell you're talking about and executes it anyway. This bit me once where, yes, I was modifying files, where it was to modify files, and then this particular task within the block triggered off, and it was like, why the hell are you doing that? It didn't need to, it just didn't understand that it wasn't supposed to, even though I had it in a block. So it's more like it's a grouping statement, but again, they seem to have named it wrong. They've inferred one thing and it does another. And that was the cut down ramp. I really wanted to put more in. So I was finding myself within Ansible punting more and more to the underlying Python interpreter, either through Ginger filters, which is a fairly easy way to get in and modify data structures. So as I was building complicated data structures, the easiest way to filter them was to do, in the templating language, just to sit there and put a filter in there and just saying, these are the data structure, these are the bits of the data structure I want to pull out and work over. And that just made it a lot easier to look at, although I was then finding colleagues weren't able to understand what the hell it was I was up to. And modules is another way of doing it as well. And doing modules in Ansible is doable, but there are some definite limits around it, and if you're running under an executable environment, which is how popular enterprise Ansible is run, there is a limit. There are strict limits, there are strict controls on what modules you can run and potentially download with it. So I was finding, I really don't want to put this next statement, I was finding there was parallels with, say, a popular web programming language, which had grown over time agriculturally, accommodating the simple cases, but without much regard for the complicated cases or, programming in the large. Often I've been told when I was looking into doing these things and trying to find solutions for it was, you're not using it correctly without being told what correctly was, or you're making it too complicated. But here's the thing. I am a bear of little brain. I like simple. I mean, look at these slides for a start. I've been using Unix for a long time, and the first Unix that I used was a 16-bit Unix, and it was, it was sweet and simple and had lovely, well-designed concepts and semantics around it. This was not that. And also, if I'm writing playbooks, I'm typically writing them as part of a team, because God knows I don't want to be writing them on my own. So it's important that the team can understand and maintain those playbooks. So I strive to write them as simple and as direct as possible so that they're able to maintain them or at least understand what's going on. So my beef with Ansible is primarily how it does what it does, and it's frequently a tool getting in the way and getting underfoot of the problem. When I'm working on a problem, I want to think about the problem, not how I need to shoehorn the tool that I'm using into working on the problem. So can we do better? Yes, we can, Dave the developer, who is Bob the Builder's mate. Back pre-Ansible, I was using a mix of shell scripts and TCL expect, because we die like real Unix men, to build and run configuration scripts, which was not ideal, and I knew that. Again, this was me on my own doing this stuff, but it did give me a lot of flexibility. My initial search was for looking for something along similar lines, but more natively over SSH, because it is the lingua franca of our time. Back when I was looking at it, it was Telnet, so I'm giving you an idea of the age back, how far back that goes. And preferably, I was looking for something which is an embedded domain-specific language, which is a particular language that's built, a particular domain-specific language, such as solving the Ansible problem, that's built over a regular programming language, so that you can sit there and punt to that quite easily and in fact use it as part of the deployment process. Also, I desperately wanted something with functions and parameter passing. So, I mean, if Ansible had anything like this, a large chunk of my issues, a small number of my issues with it would go away. So looking around, I found PyInfra and went, ooh. And I don't normally go ooh over software products, so I normally just use them out of spite, but this was actually making me somewhat happy. The major components of PyInfra are Paramiko, which is a SSH handling library, a G-event to enable to run multiple instances in green threads, and Ginger. But it only uses Ginger for real templating, not for this shenanigans of modifying your playbooks with. When you use the real templating, you can sit there and modify files and upload configuration files and the like. And Ginger is absolutely fine for that, not for building programming languages on top of it. It only requires a POSIX-ish shell at the remote end. So there's no uploading, or there's no requiring of Python at the far end, and all it does is sits there and talks to a shell. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a Unix shell either. The facts and operations that run on it are, most of them are designed to talk to a proper shell, but you can sit there, there is I should get to that. I'm getting ahead of myself, sorry. Yes. Connectors, that's how we talk to the remote end. SSH is the most common one. WinRM was there until recently. It got removed in a recent version, but he's rejigging that to come back as a superior product. It'll also talk to localhost without using SSH, and Docker. Also Terraform, I think, in there as well, but I try to avoid Terraform for much the same reasons I avoid Ansible. You can run it from the CLI as well, same as Ansible, in terms of like you can run facts and operations to perform changes. But the one thing that got me about it was that you can easily extend facts, unlike Ansible where you have to write them pretty much from scratch. Same with operations. It is designed to be very easily extended. It only uses one SSH. Whoop. What are you doing to me there? Nah, screw you, buddy. Okay, we do have a slight slide error, but that's okay. I should note that only one SSH connection is used for the entire run for the host, so there's none of this multiple connecting and disconnecting. And it logs in remote command mode, so the sessions don't show up in your last file when you do who was last on the server. It still shows up in your SSH log or audit log, as it should do, but because it's automation, it shouldn't log on as a human being. So yeah, primarily we are, like I said, we're poking the shell at the far end, pretending to be a person and parsing its responses back. So the Python model of I should pause for a drink. Excuse me a moment. So the Python model of operation is it runs the inventory, connects to all the hosts listed in the inventory, pretty much as Ansible does, and then runs in two phases. The first phase is it runs the deploy, which is basically what I'm going to be doing to these remote servers. And facts can be a part of that or not as required. And then the operations, which is the things it does to the server, is gathered together in a bunch and then executed in the second phase. So there's a first phase, which is more like discovery of what I need to do, and the second phase is do it. Here's a simple, I really should blow this up a bit. Here's a simple example of an inventory file. The astute amongst you will notice that it looks suspiciously like Python code, because it is. What we have here is group assignments, so going back to the web database deployment earlier, we sit there, we've got 3 web servers, 1 database server, and they're grouped into their appropriate groups. And then these groups are in turn collapsed into what's called the all inventory, which the next part, the deploy, will run. Because this is Python code, this can be as complicated as required. So if you have, say for example, you're running a Red Hat satellite, a Purple Trilby satellite, and you have an inventory of hosts that you require to pull down, you can sit there and query that with a simple request call, pull the data down, munge it as appropriate, and then say, this is what I need you to connect to and do your shtick on. To do this under Ansible, you have to punt to a module, and then there's configuration changes to be made to indicate that it is a separate module that needs to be run for your inventory. A lot more faffing around. This to me is just, as I said, it's extendable Python code. You can just sit there and do what you need to do to get it to work. This is an example deploy. We are sitting there and pulling in some stuff from PyInfra as is required. Operations is basically a list of things we want performed. Now, bear in mind, in phase 1, we'll only be collecting the operations. In phase 2, we execute them. So you can read through this as, yes, we will install these packages, but it doesn't happen immediately. So in here, this example, the first package installation just installs some debugging tools, and if we need to update them, it does so. As I was saying before, the servers were grouped into groups. So we basically say if the particular host that we're running on is in the DB server group, we install a database. If it's in the web server group, we install a web server, and that's it. This runs in parallel against every host, but while it does run in parallel, it runs in lockstep. So all your first operations are performed, and until all those are completed, it'll wait before moving on to the next step. For the case of, say, where a web server is running for the if we're a web server host, the second one, it'll just skip that one, but it'll still wait for the database server to install the database in case any subsequent operations rely on it. This is how you run it. It got more complicated. PyInfra 3 introduced the -y flag, because prior to that, it will actually show you the steps that it's going to apply. So it adds an extra step, basically, and you have to go, yeah, I'm happy with that, and then it'll run it. I prefer the old way, where it would just nuke your servers, and then you'd have to you'd have to fix it yourself afterwards. Again, real Unix man, we die like them. And by men, I mean all genders. I'm actually looking, this annoys me enough that I'm actually looking at how to override this within a deploy, which I think you can, you just haven't found it yet, for reasons I'll get into shortly. And the reason is, PyInfra 3.2 was only released 12 days ago. So I hadn't actually realised PyInfra 3.x was even a thing. The last I used was the 2.x series, and was quite happy with that. There's quite a reasonable progressive rate of updates coming out of it. It's a one-person project with patches coming in from all over the place. He is quite happy to, if the pull request is reasonable, he's quite happy to apply it. But yes, PyInfra 3.2 was out, and I used it. Probably just before a talk was not ideal, but so for a real-world example, like my fellow cheapskates, I've just discovered Let's Encrypt, especially now that they issue wildcard certificates. I've been a user of wildcard certificates for some time, but they cost a bundle. And then Let's Encrypt, by recently, I mean maybe 2 years ago, started releasing wildcard certs, and it's just like, yes, because having to manage all the alternate names for certificates is a pain in the butt. So I use them on a variety of services. I have Web, SNTP, IMAP split across quite a few servers. Because Let's Encrypt updates every 3 months, manually updating was a pain. So this sounds like a job for automation. As for anything, well, not strictly true, but as for most things that I approach, I sit there and try and do something high level, so at least I know whether I've hit all the specific points that I'm after. And ideally, at this sort of high level, I want my deploy script also at a high level to reflect this. So we archive the existing certificates that are in place in case of a rollback, which I've had to do. That has actually saved my butt when Let's Encrypt changed the issuing certificate and my Android phone decided to hate me. update the certificates in an atomic fashion, and then reload any underlying dependent services that use them. I've actually managed to hit all points, but not quite in the way that I wanted to. But I'm happy with my lifestyle choices. So, atomic updates, I used the word previously. I've seen a lot of processes, both human and computer, that just write over the top of shared files when updating them. And the key word here is shared, when other processes are using them as well. Those processes are wrong. Hang on. Those processes are wrong. Did I even turn this on?
Yeah.
Sure?
Yeah.
I don't think I did. What I wanted to say was, those processes are wrong. I'm rarely so emphatic about these things, but this is a hill that I will nail my corpse to. The technically correct process for updating files, and as we know, technically correct is the best form of correct, is we upload the file into the same directory, but into an adjacent file, basically one that isn't in use. And then we move that file into place, and by that I mean we use a Unix move command, which underneath would be using the syscall rename on the same file system, which then causes POSIX semantics to kick in, which is any process that's using the old file will see the complete old file. Any process which comes across and opens the file after the move will see the complete new file. If you copy over the top of a file, there will be a point where your process that is using that file will come in and say, oh, I'll read this file. Oh, it's empty because it's just been truncated by the copy before the copy has occurred, because you have processes running concurrently. I see this time and time again. I've seen it in my current workplace. I've seen it in my previous workplace. I point at you. I don't have anyone here from my current workplace, so I can't point at them. It just causes transient errors, and the transient errors are something comes along and goes, hang on, this file is empty, it's supposed to have your certificate in there or something else, and suddenly, boom, and you get an error. And the error is only transient because at some point the copy completes and then the entire file is there. Yes, because I've seen this like many times, it just irks me. And it's like the POSIX file system, the semantics of the POSIX file system to me, we don't have to do it this way, we can do it atomically, and everyone lives happily ever after, and there's no error messages. So back to our regular story. Dagnabbit. Gonna have to, I knew this would happen. Anyway, this is my inventory file. This is more complicated than a regular file, than the inventory file we saw before, but only because I'm introducing group data. So I've obfuscated the name of the hosts that I would normally use, but that's okay. We have the host name. I use a short host name when I run the inventory file. 5 minutes, yeah. Dagnabbit. Anyway, yeah, I've screwed the pooch again in timing. Sorry about that, guys. I will very quickly go through this. We have a short host name and then the longer version of the host name. We have group data, which sits there and is applied to all of the inventory, so that's data that's available to all the underlying deploy. The SSH user, the key, all of these are not my production ones. Known host files, ACME path and domains now. ACME is the name of the protocol that lets encrypt users. So it's the path to where my certificates get stored. The domains, you can actually put a list in here. The only problem is if you override it from the command line, the only option you have available to you is a list. You can't put in any complicated data structures. So I've stayed as a list here. There's a debug option with your inventory, so you can see exactly how what is in each of your hosts. So if you do have problems with what you're doing, this is a highly visible thing. Ansible has a similar tool for that, but I find you need to munge it to get the output format. This is my deploy script. This actually encapsulates everything that pretty much everything that I listed in the requirements. We have the laser, it does nothing. Oh, here we go.
So we have for domain and host domain, Acme domain, so that's the supply list of domains coming in of all the names of the certificates that I want to modify. We sit there and we do things. The big oofs were things I was going to describe. I'm not going to describe them now. We generate a certificate from the certificates that Let's Encrypt gives us. Because I use combined certs where you have the key and the full chain in there, you have to sit there and do some magic on the back end to get that out of what Let's Encrypt supplies to you. Update cert is the one that's doing the bulk of the work. It's actually sitting there and basically says, for a postfix certificate, this is where it lives, the domain involved, who owns it, the group ownership of it, and the permissions on it. I've complained before that I really wanted parameter passing and subroutines. I don't normally like passing this many parameters to a subroutine, so I got what I asked for. It's, but this was the minimum required to get the work done, which I'm happy about. So it sits there, and because we're potentially uploading multiple certificates, are you sure that's right? Because we're uploading multiple certificates, we only want to reload the service once. So I keep track of whether the certificate got uploaded. The update cert returns and says, yes, I updated the certificate, or no, I didn't. If it says, yes, I did, we sit there and basically we keep track of what we need to do. And then at the end, we sit there and go, okay, I need to reload the services as required. I'm going to skip over that, even though that was the bulk of it. This is the reload service operation, which I just showed before. It actually sits there on the back end and sits there and says what type of service that we're running the service under. Sorry, what type of service manager are we running the service under? Because as usual, I run all sorts. Daemon Tools is default, which is the second lot, but I also use RUnit. It actually sits there and checks that. So it's doing a lot of this checking for me. I don't have to rely on it. Insert live demo here. Who wants to see me nuke my production servers? Hands up. Yeah, at least a couple. Excellent. Let me see if... Hang on. Let me... Stop! Stop! He's already dead. Screw you, hippie. I'm going to try this. Yes. Yes. Get fucked. Oh, sorry. You can cut that out, right?
Your office must be fun.
I'm usually left alone in my office. I do not know why. Yes, there is unfortunately a subset. So the inventory name that I'm using here is the real one, which contains my real production service, and I want to update my certificates. And I'm going to run this, and we're going to see magic happen. So this is connecting to all the servers. When it's actually connected to those servers, it's actually run the deploy on there. Don't you dare pause on me. This is going to use up my remaining runtime. There we go. Unfortunately, some of these servers are very on the other side of the planet, so there is a bit of latency involved, especially with the toing and froing. So this is a list of the changes. Unfortunately, it's not going to fit on the screen. How about we do that? So I said before, when you run it without the -y flag, it tells you what the operations you're going to do. It's there and it's telling me it's going to upload postfix cert P3, which is correct. Upload like HTTPD certs to all three servers, which is also correct, and move them into place. There is a bug at the moment. I'm not sure why it is, but the bottom one where it says reloading like HTTP should actually be postfix. Sometimes it says it is, sometimes it doesn't, but we'll sit there. But it's saying press enter to do it, so I'm going to do that, and as I was saying, it skips operations where it doesn't have to perform them, so it knows postfix isn't on P1 and P2, skips that. But it worked for P3, because that's where P3 has postfix in place.
Moving it into place. Come on! But you know I'm on the time here. Things are happening. This will work well. This is nothing like a live demo under pressure. Come on, and there we go. We sit there, and again, something buggy going on there. It should be saying it's reloading one or the other, not both, because it's a separate operation. This could be a Pyinfra thing. I have yet to dig into it to find out why. At this stage, it'll be actually reloading just like HTTPD. P1's the worst server. It's okay, it's going away soon, and basically because of grief like this. The other two servers are at least in Australia. And there we go, and everything worked. Thank God I don't have to spend the afternoon unbalking that. Right, light demo. Why are you not wiki?
We are done.
We're out of time?
Mm.
Hit me up afterwards if you have questions. Unless the question is, why can't you run one of these things on time?